talk to us about the actual issues with sugar as it relates to inflammation. And
So,
I'm assuming, making an assumption, we're talking about processed sugar, but like the sugar in blueberries, not so much.
yeah, I'm worried. We're
Correct
never
me.
concerned about sugar coming from fruit as long as it's coming from the whole fruit. So I recommend people not drinking juices per se. Now, juicing is one thing if they want to do it themselves, but when they buy store-bought juices, usually they'll find out that there's actually
Yeah.
added sugar to that, or corn syrup and other things that now there's been lawsuits between some of these companies that were advertising that it's just naked or clear or clean, and it's actually not. It actually had high fructose corn syrup and other sweeteners in there artificially. Anything that's coming from a soda company, you should kind of think twice if you buy a product, because like that's what they're good at doing, is putting a lot of junk in it. So like, oh, I'm getting a fruit juice from this company that makes soda. I'm like, they probably didn't come with the right intention, right? They're transitioning the same person to buy the same higher amount of sugar because that's what they're accustomed to getting. So they're just kind of crafting it with some kind of fruit label or product. It has maybe 5% juice product in there or something. But sugar is a pro-inflammatory food, particularly when it's highly refined, because you're removing a lot of the minerals, you're removing even the fiber part of the plant, and even other health benefits. So most people, let's say they're getting a packaged soda drink which has like 20 grams or more. I even saw some natural things at the store the other day, 38 grams of sugar just in a little like kind of lemonade kind of thing, and that's just pro-inflammatory. The problem is that increase of blood sugar, once someone starts getting insulin resistance, and now 70% of the population has some kind of blood sugar pre-diabetes or blood sugar problem that correlates also along with obesity, is that becomes a systemic anti-inflammatory state. So when someone has blood sugar levels, even if they're tipped over in their hemoglobin A1C just a little bit, 5.7 or above, they're already putting their whole body in a systemic inflammatory response. And that's why we then end up having things like kidney problems, retinal problems, neuropathy problems, erectile dysfunction problems, blood pressure problems, cardiovascular problems, because it's the tipping point. So blood sugar, and related to eating excess, highly refined sugars, when they remove the fiber from food and they put a lot of this kind of highly refined sugar, your blood sugar, your insulin spikes up, and then over time, it's just not able to capture that glucose enough. So then there's an insulin resistance where the blood sugar starts to elevate. So instead of eating the food and then all that energy coming back into the body as fuel, it's disconnected. Then that excess energy converts to lipids and excess fat and blood pressure problems, and advanced what they call glycation, AGEs, advanced glycation end products. This is where, like, when people have higher blood sugar problems, then they get like neuropathies and vision problems and cardiomyopathies and all sorts of, neurodegenerative diseases. Now we're looking at dementias and Alzheimer's disease, which is a big problem right now going on with all of us aging in the population. It's chronic inflammation in the brain. And we find that it's over decades. And even people that have mildly above blood sugar will have higher rates of those cognitive disorders as they get older.
And there's a test, right, that people can take to measure their inflammation response in their bodies as a whole. Is that helpful?
Yeah, there's a lot of, so I look at all these things. So if someone has elevated lipids, we already know they're in pro-inflammatory state because they're eating pro-inflammatory foods. If someone has an elevated A1C, they're already because they already have the blood sugar diabetes problem, right? I mean, you can do CRP. There's all sorts of interleukins. There's all sorts of inflammatory marker panels. Like say like a rheumatologist or, immunologist will have those tests. But literally you can just say, do you have any of these itis conditions that I mentioned before? And if they do, there's your answer. I don't have to do a test, right? Like the idea is like people have some kind of ache or pain or dysfunction. That's the proof in the pudding, because when they're coming in for a reason, but the idea is that we also can take someone who's even healthy and make them even healthier at the end of the day.
So you were talking about sugar to go off on the Dotsie's question, things not to eat. What are some other things not to eat? And then we can
so anything that's pro-inflammatory, which is animal protein and saturated fats, right? We want to cut down on the highly refined sugars, right? Which is, and salt, which is mainly on the packaged foods and frozen foods, which is where we get most of those things. I always tell people, just don't eat anything from a car window, number one. That's just the rule. Start with that, eat less mothers and faces foods, right? Those are simple things that you can do, because when people just go to Whole Foods, it's a great way to do it. That's the gold standard, but we want to kind of slow it.
There is a really big difference between the window food and then, the whole group that's like, it's a face, it had a mother, but it's all the things, right? Grass-fed, lavender massaged, put to sleep before they died, all the crap. But there's a large group of people that think, there is a difference between those two, but it's not as big of a difference. It's not as big a difference where you wouldn't still not eat something with a mother or a face, right? So
let me clarify that, because there is. So eating organic, grass-fed, wild-caught, and free range does not change morbidity and mortality overall. So so we were sold, the industry sold us that we were paying a little bit more per pound to get something that has like less antibiotics or less hormones, for example, but it's still pro-inflammatory, right? It still has cholesterol, which is heart disease. 3 people every minute die from a heart attack in the United States. It still has little to no antioxidants. Now, a grass-fed, wild-caught, or free range may have a little bit more, but it's still overall lowering. 99% of factory food in America right now is factory farmed. So yeah, somebody might get a wild-caught salmon here or a grass-fed burger here or there, but they're not eating it 3 times a day in all their meals in all the restaurants, because the restaurants are all factory farmed. Fast food is all factory farmed, if not even real food, right? It has no phytonutrients. So whether that's grass-fed or wild-caught or farm raised, there's no phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are all the rainbow colored particles and flavonoids, resveratrols, curcuminoids, you name it, beta carotenes and sulforaphanes, all these things that you go to the health store and buy. There's no chicken pill, there's no chicken pill, there's no pork pill, there's no bacon pill, there's none of these things that are for preventing and reversing diseases. And in fact, the fish is actually the fish oil, it's not the fish protein. Right. So a lot of people think like we need those things, but those things all are pro-inflammatory. They have heterocyclic amines, TMAO, insulin growth factor. They increase the blood sugar problems, the intramyocellular lipids and inflammation. So it actually, animal proteins, even if it's wild-caught, grass-fed and farm free range, will actually decrease still metabolic rate. And people are trying to lose weight. Right. So plant-based diets just have the opposite of everything I said. So that's the goal why we're trying to shift over to an anti-inflammatory diet rather than a pro-inflammatory diet. If people truly understand those two things, like the difference between an anti-inflammatory protein and a pro-inflammatory protein, then they'll tend to slowly move over. The problem is everybody's trying to redefine the industry. It's like, well, let me just get a cleaner food. Cleaner didn't get anybody healthier. It just kind of made us have the bragging right that we were buying something that was more expensive. But at the end of the day, their cholesterol is still the same. Their inflammation is still the same. Morbidity and mortality is still the same. So organic versus non-organic meats didn't show anything. So even though we all did that when I used to be that way, I used to make sure my eggs came from Taos and they did yoga and sung kumbaya, and then my massage beef from Japan, and I was the guy that was just like that. But that didn't improve or anything in terms of the numbers or lowering my risk of diseases going forward.
It wasn't until you got rid of them.
Until you got rid of them.
Pro-inflammatory. You can't. So in other words, trying to massage a pro-inflammatory food into something less inflammatory really doesn't work. Just we need to get rid.
We need to eat less
triggers.
of it. And the more important thing that now we're learning in the last 5 years, more importantly, with microbiome, is that animal protein causes dysbiosis. It has endotoxins, regardless of where you buy it, regardless how you cook it, regardless whether you boil it, it has endotoxins in there. And the endotoxins causes dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of your microbiome. So animal protein has no fiber. Fiber is what actually your microbes live on. It actually feeds on short chain fatty acids, which create something called N-butyrate. N-butyrate is the energy molecule that your microbiome survives on. It's like the CoQ10 of the gut. But those are anti-inflammatory fuels. And if the people have less of that, actually have more pro-inflammatory aspects. That's why when they have animal protein diets, they have constipation. Right? Because it's not feeding the microbes to do their job. We just thought that the fiber was just a bulking agent, so if someone even took like a Metamucil or Benefiber, kind of a product to have them have a bowel movement, that's fine. It's not fine because it's not feeding the microbes. What they need is food to actually do that. That's why when people take those fiber supplements, then they still have to take a fiber supplement to have a bowel movement. But if you eat the right type of food, your body does it naturally.